What's going on, Minties? The Uncanny Omar here with my Astonishing Melanie. This is my wife. So this is a very special episode. I did one with my daughter, and now my wife wants in on this. We used to have a podcast together, so this is very cool that she's slowly coming back into this life. I don't know why she wants to do this. But anyway, today, what are we talking about today, Melanie?
Just a second, it's heavy. Ugh. The Annotated Sandman, Volume 1. Collecting issues 1 through 20.
So stay tuned. And welcome back, Minties. As I mentioned earlier, this lovely lady next to me is my wife, the Astonishing Melanie. Now, Melanie, pretend I am an idiot, and I know that's not too far-fetched for you, but what if I don't know what annotated means? What is annotated? She is an English major, by the way. Has her master's in English. So if anybody knows, it's her and Neil Gaiman and people that wrote this book, I guess. So what is this?
Annotated Sandman means that Leslie S. Klinger, I hope that's how you pronounce his name, annotated, wrote notes on the side, and we'll be showing the inside of this later. It's about that thick, the side notes, that give historical details, like, you know, on this date in England, this was really happening. Lots of notes about what Neil Gaiman wrote in the script. So Neil Gaiman didn't write the notes on the side. His buddy, I think he calls him Les, he begged to annotate Sandman. And Neil Gaiman kept saying, no, you can do it when I'm dead.
Wow.
And then Neil said, one day I couldn't remember something, so I called up Les and said, please annotate this before I forget everything.
So that's how this story came around? Wow. There is a foreword by Neil Gaiman. The book is $49.99. It is published by Vertigo. Rest in peace. But now there are 4 of these.
How is it rest in peace if this was just published?
She doesn't know the news yet. Breaking news. Vertigo's gone. They just
since last week?
Yeah. Like literally at the beginning of this week is when it happened. So I have a comic book show. How do you not watch this? Oh, I didn't break that news though. I broke Marvel news, not DC news. DC, call me.
I don't watch your videos. I just like
what?
I just like them.
95% of my subscribers don't watch my videos. Does it go through the entire issue? Like if it's issue 1, it's the complete issue 1. It's complete issue 2.
Yes, and in fact, he even puts notes on. You know, in the original publishing, an ad followed this page.
Okay, now she's going to showcase the artwork, but I assume it's black and white.
So let me ask you, like me, I don't care that an ad followed this page. Is there some kind of cut in the pages that I don't notice? Like pacing, or I don't know. Like,
oh, sometimes...
Why would you care if there was an ad that was taken out?
Well, the way most of the hardcover collections or trade paperback collections do it is they put a picture, because sometimes they're splash pages. So if an ad was before a splash page, it would take away from a splash page. Now I know Sandman doesn't do it that often, but like as far as like comic books, I mean Sandman practically follows the 6 to 9 panel art. So this is for somebody that has read Sandman.
Yes.
So if this is this is not, you would not suggest this for somebody's first time reading Sandman. Mm-mm. You would suggest this after you've read Sandman.
Because there's so much information that, in fact, this is like my 3rd or 4th time rereading Sandman. Mm-hmm. And every once in a while, I want to read the annotations, but it was stopping the flow of the story for me. So then I got to the end. I'm like, well, I want to keep reading. So I went and got just a trade, read it through. So now I'm going to go back when we get volume 2 in and just read the annotations and see if I like that better. I may like it better because I got so excited about the story. I think near the end there was a lot of writing when it was the Shakespeare issue. And I just want to read the story.
That issue itself is long with the dialogue.
So
let's look at it. Mm-hmm. There will be spoilers though. I do want to warn people just in case.
Sorry. So here we have the dust jacket done by the infamous Dave McKean, known for the Sandman covers, and cover designed by Mike Essel. I'm going to show you how it compares to an absolute. So it is wider than an absolute Sandman, but it is shorter. That reason being is you've got all the annotations over here. Taking off the dust jacket, which I do to read, you will see. Oh, there's a little stain. Please don't tell my husband. I think I was reading while I was eating. Don't tell my husband. So, but I knew enough to take this dust jacket off. So let me tell you, reading in bed is difficult with this thing. It is very cumbersome. Guess if you lay on your stomach, it works a little better. All right. So there is a introduction, a preface, which, by the way, I always thought was preface, but an English teacher schooled me and said it's preface. And I was like, what? So if you didn't know, apparently it is pronounced preface. Oh, I didn't notice this before. That's the Corinthian. That's really cool. He's one of my favorite characters with his mouth eyes there. When I was teaching high school one year, I dressed as the Corinthian for Halloween and made a couple kids scream when I just closed my eyes with my teeth painted on the eyelids and stare out the door of the classroom. That was a lot of fun. All right, so as you can see, we've got over here on the sides the annotations, and it is all in black and white, which didn't bother me. In fact, for a minute I was like, wait, was Sandman in color? I can't remember. But of course, this story lends itself to black and white. The color missing doesn't detract from the story at all. The only thing I do have to say, though, is that after a while of reading white text on black and then switch back and forth to the black text on white, it gave me a little bit of a headache. I mean, just look at that. This great dynamic panel here. That looks great in black and white. One thing I found interesting that Leslie Klinger pointed out is the notes Neil Gaiman wrote to the artists and how the actual art differs from what Neil Gaiman was suggesting. So, for example, we have here in this first panel a man in a surgical mask. When it says to the side, Neil Gaiman asked for an elderly, late 40s, but powerful man who's probably the local gamekeeper or similar, which is a really nice detail. But the artist didn't go with that. So it makes me wonder about the relationship between the author and artist. And, did they ever take liberties that Neil Gaiman didn't agree with, but went with anyway? Or he just decided, he liked that? How much is he in control, etc.? Let us know in the comments below what you think, how artists and writers, or if you know, right, how they work together. In the introduction, Neil Gaiman talks about how he was such an avid reader, and there are so many literary references that the annotator points out that I really appreciate. For example, here in panel 5, after Dream has basically wrought his revenge on his captor, he says, "And I have showed him fear, giving him eternal waking." Off to the side, the annotator notes that T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, "I will show you fear in a handful of dust." That is a really cool reference that, when I read it, I'm sure the first few times, he showed him fear. It's just plain clear cut. He has eternal waking in these nightmares. However, it came from that first part of the line of the poem, "In a handful of dust." Sandman, dust, get it? Awesome. Glad you get it. And there's my little bookmark. In the first several issues of Sandman, Neil Gaiman borrowed heavily from the DC universe. Lots of references and cameos of old characters. And this one, I just have to point out, I really appreciate, has Scott Free, Mr. Miracle. I recently finished reading Tom King's Mr. Miracle, and that was such a good book that, reading back through Sandman, I'm like, oh, I know who that is. And in the annotation off to the side, he does explain the Justice League International, formerly Justice League Europe, etc., etc. So Leslie Klinger definitely explains all of these DC Universe references. The issue of A Midsummer Night's Dream is chock full of dialogue story. It is very dense. And here are the notes. This side, all covered up. Oh, that was really cool. I didn't know anything about the Long Man of Wellington. Okay, so a decent amount of annotations on these pages. Yep, there we go. Lots of writing. Another example of how detailed the annotations are is over here in panel 6, where he is explaining a quote from the movie that's playing on the TV, which definitely does add to the story. But like specifically when the Wolf Man was released, you know, it was a Universal film, etc., etc. As a writer myself, I really appreciate reading the annotations about Neil Gaiman's script, how he gives his characters love by giving them backstories, details that only he and the artist knew. We weren't privy to those details until now. These characters are alive, and just as if you knew somebody, you don't know every single thing that's happened to them. Neil Gaiman is writing down these things happen to the characters. We just never see it. So that happens throughout the book. This one example I'm wanting to show you, though, is not only details about, backstory, but in this instance, foreshadowing what is going to happen, issues later. So here we have Sandman at the beginning of time creating his ruby. And it says in the annotation that he's all white. He said that this panel is foreshadowing Daniel, his son, issues later, who is dressed in all white. Pretty cool.
And that's what the inside of the book looks like. So if you like words, this is for you. If you just like pictures and less words, maybe not for you. But honestly, that is a good question. Like, who would you recommend this book to? Like, if I had read Sandman one time and I thought it was a great thing, like, is this for me, or is this somebody that has already read it more than twice and wants to get more out of it?
I would suggest, if you've read it twice, if you read it a long time ago and then picking it up, it might be a little too heavy. But then, if you like annotations, perhaps you would enjoy it.
Do they have a Cliff Notes version of Sandman?
I don't know.
That's the question.
I don't know. However, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's a lot to read all at once. I'm looking forward to seeing what it's like, having reread the third trade, the volume, going back and just reading the annotations when when it comes in.
It's coming. It's coming. It's shipped. It's shipped.
Yeah. Before we sign off, I have a question for you, Mentees. What is your favorite moment or issue in issues 1 through 20?
Can I answer?
Yes.
Oh. The restaurant issue. I think it's issue 6, right? The creepy restaurant issue. What about you?
It's pretty messed up.
Yep, it is.
I really enjoy 8 because I love death and taken out of context, that doesn't sound good. I love the anthropomorphication that's a word, of death. She's really cool.
Oh.
And it's not that interesting of an issue. I just really enjoy the dynamic between her and her brother and how she puts him in his place later on as well. Just like, quit whining.
Okay. Now, any last words before we sign off?
If it's cool and classy.
So close.
If it's classy and minty.
I think that's been trademarked already. If it's classy and
cool,
it must be near mint.
It must be near mint. I like minty.